How did you get into the business yourself?
In the 1960s, I was caddying at a golf course, and then and the stock market was hot at the time. So I was 12 years old, and I was talking about stocks with the people that I was caddying with, and I took my caddying money and I decided I would invest. I didn't know what I was doing. First stock I bought was a company which was the only company I ever heard of that was selling for less than $5 a share. That was my criteria, because I figured I could buy more shares, and that meant if it went up, I would make more money. Obviously stupid. But I got lucky. The first company I bought was a company that was about to go broke, but somebody acquired it, and it tripled. And I thought, this game is easy. So I got hooked.
How instant was that? What was the timeline of you investing to a tripling?
I don't remember exactly, but I would say it was probably maybe a little less than a year,
That's
something like that.
pretty quick to triple. Yeah. I mean, that can really hook you. That can really pull you in.
Yeah, when an acquisition comes along. So, and then I got hooked on the game.
I know your dad was a musician, jazz, but how did you get into even being interested in that? Was it listening to what they were talking about, the guys that were golfing when you were caddying, or?
At the time, everybody played a little bit around, in other words, they were taking the stock market was very hot. So I'd walk around and we'd be chatting. I'd be asking them questions, and they would think it was a little odd that I was asking them questions, and they were nice to a young kid. And so we would talk about it. And I'd say, what stock? And what, and so that's how it happened.
And at that time, if I'm 12 years old and I'm your friend, how was Ray Dalio? What was your personality like? Were you shy? Were you curious? Were you confident? What was your personality like?
Well, the first word that you mentioned that comes is curious.
Okay.
I'm very, very curious, right? I'm not shy, but I'm polite. I don't want to, if they're playing golf, I want to do what they want me to do. But if you get a nice person and I'm curious and we get into an interesting conversation that they're interested in, it's great.
Now, you caddy for some interesting people. I know one of them being President Nixon. Was he a president when you were caddying, or not yet?
No, not yet.
He wasn't yet?
No. He had lost the election, his first, and then it was post that.
Got it.
Then the Duke of Windsor and some other people.
Yeah, that's a nice list.
And then there was a Wall Street crowd, and that led to my being able to clerk on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, because one of those guys, we were talking about the markets and so on, and he had a specialist firm, in other words, a floor brokerage firm on the floor. And so he said, hey, why don't you, in your summer job, come down and clerk? So between college and my summer job, my going to business school, I got to clerk on the floor of the stock exchange. But along the way, those guys made a big difference in my life.
I bet. Do you remember any dialogue with Richard Nixon, or no? Was there any specific that stuck till today, or not?
No,
really?
he wasn't chatty.
Okay. It's funny, I asked Clint Hill. I don't know if you know who Clint Hill is.
No.
Clint Hill was the Secret Service agent when JFK got shot. He's the first guy that jumped on the top of the car.
Ooh.
And he was a Secret Service for Richard Nixon. He says he wouldn't talk too much. He was always kind of to himself and quiet. It seems it's the same thing with you as well. So now you go to high school. Who were you in high school? Same curious? Were you playing sports? Were you a 4.0 GPA kid? Who were you in high school?
No, I was the opposite of a 4.0 GPA kid. Like, I didn't like high school. I did like playing with my pals and having a good time. There was so much of learn this, remember this. And I think, first of all, I have a very bad rote memory. What I mean rote memory is if something doesn't have a reason for being what it is within its context, like let's say phone numbers or names and so on, it's challenging for me to remember it. But also, I didn't understand the purpose of it. I didn't get it hooked in. It wasn't curiosity based. It wasn't interesting. And so I was a lousy high school student. I barely got in on probation to C.W. Post College, which is no Ivy League college. But I'm very, very curious at the time for lots of different things.
What topics?
People would say everything from politics to, markets and how things work, not mechanical things, but how the systems.
Conceptual,
I was involved with politics quite a bit.
Why politics?
Well, I was young enough at the time that I remember Eisenhower going to Nixon, the debate in Kennedy, and I was inspired by John Kennedy and that era. And so all along then, it was interesting. And so when Bobby Kennedy was running for the Senate, it was in New York, I got very actively involved. I was in high school. And so that part of it was interesting to me. So anyway, politics, markets.
Did you play any games? Were you a card guy, backgammon, chess? Like, did you have any of those games?
I played backgammon.
You played backgammon?
Yeah, played backgammon. I liked chess. I played some chess. But no, it was mostly, my game was the markets, because the two things went together.
Wow.
Okay, the two things went together. What was going on in the world, politics and so on, and what was going on in the markets. And to me, it was an ability to bet on what was going on in the markets, right? In other words, or bet on what's going on in the world. Because what was going on in the world would affect what was going on in the markets. So to me, that enthralled me, because it wasn't just theoretical. Like if you read a newspaper and everybody talks politics and they say, what's going to happen? Oh yeah, bet on it. Make your bet, and the markets gives you an objective scoring of how well you are at betting on these global macro economic political things.
You'll see a lot of people will say that's a boring formula, or it's an outdated. You'll be in the industry and say, oh, this whole diversification is a boring formula, it's outdated, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm just trying to say, I went from nothing. You asked me, okay? My dad's a jazz musician, middle class or low middle class family. I had nothing other than parents who cared for me, and I could go to a good public school. And that was the only thing I had. And if I took that and I say, okay, here I am with the things that has happened over the markets and making money and building a business and so on, there are a limited number of principles that I want to pass along to people, because I think if they can get those principles, that would be extremely valuable. And this is not boring. So when I come back and you say, okay, that arc in life was not boring, that was a very successful and exciting arc in life, and this is one of those principles. So if you take diversifying well, how to diversify well, please go understand that principle. It's only a couple of pages. Please go understand that principle, because when you have savings and you think, how much money do I need for my kids' education or my retirement or whatever it is and so on, and if you don't know how to do this well, you're risking a lot. And if you do it well and so on, it produces an enormous amount of opportunity.